if I say, oh, I made a crossover between The Office and How I Met Your Mother, it's super dope, you should watch it. That's the thing with AI, it's hard for content to become a banger or a hit. It's like you're more curious what AI is capable of, but not necessarily the narrative, the content, the quality of it. What I've been trying to build was like, how do we build a common vocabulary to describe the future we all want to live in? Power of narratives are influencing our user experience, our interactions. Sometimes you need to solve it in different ways, and it's not only technology. We need dreams and hope in a way, like we need a common goal that we are striving, that desirable future that we want to build. What's the point to save the planet if we all hate each other, right?
How do you see Europe in this context?
I think the main difference is the appetite to risk and like being accountable, because the European system itself having so many members and it's so interconnected, it's quite complicated. I don't want to sit and write 70 pages to convince you that I will do something interesting. And what Horizon does, it is that valley of IP.
So, Timi, thank you so much for joining us in the dungeon of Oradea Fortress, owned by Make IT in Oradea. Thank you for coming and staying with us for a couple of days. So I have an interesting question for you to start the pod. What truth do very few people agree with you on, or have been agreeing with you on, maybe in the past, and now it was like, I've told you so?
Oh, that's a good one. I mean, there are a couple of things, but also probably due to the nature of my job, like working with foresight and future scenarios and, being able to simulate scenarios on techno-societal changes and movements, right? But we had a few predictions on a few hype cycles, same with the XR, metaverse, self-driving cars. Now with the AI, is it the boom? How are the investments going? Is it mainly similar to .com or similar to the cloud infrastructure, right? Because there's been a lot of investment in cloud, but still the use cases didn't catch up till now, where now we're building also on cloud, but for something else. And it's the same, or like, are we building the infrastructure first before we actually know what type of use cases we'll have?
I think it was similar with the blockchain.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there are predictable elements there, but also like people worrying on kind of the future of jobs, future competences. So what I've been predicting was like that we were moving from the expert to the T-shape and then to the I call it exponential, where we have like augmented intelligence, which is a bit interesting phenomenon that it's happening also in companies, like how your pool of data that is trained in a certain way, and then of course if you're using agentic workflows, how does it integrate with your company? Do you really use it or not? Is it AI only for productivity, or can you use it for something else? So
interesting.
Those are some ideas that I've been playing with, and then I think probably the closest prediction was when the Apple headset will be released. That one, I think 2018, now speculating around 2024. Yeah.
You talk very much about like, and you also mentioned already, like prediction, future, playing with future scenarios. How do you first how and then why do you do this? And why do you think it's also important for us to do that more? Because you are also kind of, I don't know, futurologist or something like that.
I think since the development that we're doing in multiple industries start to be more and more interconnected, software and cars, for instance, right? IoT, governance, policies. I think we need to have a way to, like, a holistic framework which kind of showcases all the other implications. So if you as a user, if you're part of a certain ecosystem, how is that ecosystem shaped by government, by resources, ecology, culture, right? So for each being able to switch various lenses to get more precision on trends. So they're not only trends, but they're associated with narratives, stories that you and me, we can relate. What I've been trying to build was like, how do we build a common vocabulary to describe the future we all want to live in? Because otherwise it's just trends and numbers and they're boring. And I don't get how they associate to my specific scenario, to my specific case. And in order to do that, sometimes we go super far in the future, like 2070, 2080, and then we do backcasting.
How does that future look in your predictions, dreams, visions?
And that's the thing. When we talk about future, it's actually futures.
Wow.
It's like, multiple timelines, right?
Yeah.
From the moment that we're looking at. So the way we're doing it, we're asking what if questions,
Okay.
So basically we're building, it's called world building. I've been really blessed and fortunate to work with Alex McDowell that invented world building. He made Minority Report, Fight Club, Black Mirror, and he's a world builder. He started, to work in movies as a scene designer or production designer, building the worlds, and then the scenes were writing by themselves. The script writers didn't need to put that much effort into writing everything because the world and the environment and all the systems and subsystems were dictating how the world was going. So basically, the moment that somebody walks out the door, they're interacting with the world and systems of systems. Like, even if I walk out, I interact with Oradia's healthcare system, even if I don't go to the hospital. Maybe somehow indirectly paying for some taxes, or that's how the world works, right? So those, if you think about AI and world modeling and graphs, right? You have like graphs and subgraphs, which each is kind of a bucket of information, structured in hierarchies. And that's also how the world works in systems and subsystems. So what we're doing is like we take this like almost like a kaleidoscope, right? So you have various colors and lenses. Each of those lenses, it's like a research area. And then we take those trends and signals and we project possible and plausible scenarios. Most likely, least to happen, like a dark scenario, and it's interesting, like, for instance, the great thing in Black Mirror, for instance, is that they take the world as we know it, but they take only one of these lenses and they shift it 1 degree. And then you see how the world is affected, right? It's just a what if we pay with our Instagram likes to buy coffee, right? Like, that's a question, and then a whole script emerges from that.
And everything changes.
Yeah. It helps us also use it as a translation mechanism. Like, past few years, I moved from working on human-centric products to more kind of system design and like going into system thinking, working with cities. Like, I was always fascinated, like, if I work with on a product, an app, cup of coffee or something, I can influence your life for a few minutes or seconds, right? And that's kind of human-centric. Then I got passionate about people that work in architecture, like the way this place is designed. It influences your user experience and flow, or in your apartment every day, the moment you wake up, how you're going to the bathroom, making coffee, sleeping, going to work, all that. Then I started to be really fascinated by city builders. They influence your life for hundreds of years, or decades at least. And that for me was really interesting to see, like, how do you design at that level? And then I looked, I also had a few interactions with NEOM in Saudi Arabia, like on some speculative design and concepts. That's kind of every designer wet dream, basically, because you start from scratch, right? So don't have
no limitations, basically.
But in the same time, it comes with other type of limitations and challenges and culture and all that. So, like, one of the questions I've been working with was, how would culture and heritage be in 2080 in a city that doesn't exist yet? Like, literally building it, based on what culture you're building it, what legacy, what heritage to be able to produce culture. That was really challenging one, but also how do we challenge mobility, the way we move through cities, the way we flow, and then make comparison with cities like this that kind of started as medieval cities, and the roads and infrastructure are dictated by two horse asses next to each other from, maybe even before Roman Empire, and we built cars based on that, trains, planes, just because iteration. Yeah.
And looking like at all these scenarios, how optimistic or pessimistic are you about, like, how it would go? Or, I don't know, is this something that influences your thoughts when you make this exercise of creating these scenarios?
There are desirable futures where you're going as optimistic as possible, but optimism, it's also culture based and based on your own perspective and upbringing and expectations and culture. That's why, for instance, one of the projects we did was like, how would, for instance, in the context of cars and Volvo, how would what is safety in Sao Paulo and how is safety in Jakarta in 2050, 2070, right? It's like, because we didn't see that big 2-ton SUV electric would, be the safety norm there. And when we asked people on the street how they see it, they're like, for us, safety is public lighting, like lighting on the street, because the moment you get out on these streets, you might get killed, right? So for them, safety meant something else. It's not that you're driving in a big city and you hope you don't crash, and for them it was like it had different connotation. So that's why, like, having multi perspectives and being able to switch those lenses for contextual. And now I think with AI we're able to do more, and also, as I said, using it as a translation mechanism. So how can we, representing the tech industry, how are we talking with policymakers, right? What type of scenarios are we crafting together? We see now with EU, right, like a different approach to US and China in terms of data, in terms of AI, in terms of training, ethics. And there are two schools of thoughts there, like, build first and figure it out later, or, build some guide rails and follow them and have more consistent curriculum on what to build and what not, what are the dangerous cases, because that's the thing also with this technology. Once you let it loose, we saw cases like with Google Gemini and where it gone wrong, right? And I was listening down a podcast, I think, was it Not an Investment Device or All In podcast, can't remember, but they were discussing this about how some corporates like Google, for instance, their whole mission is to build the best search, bringing information to people, right?
Yeah.
Indexing all the world knowledge
that was
and then
their
make
mission
it accessible.
since the start. Yeah.
So since when a department in that company would dictate, certain aspects of how, let's save the planet and society? It's that's not Google's mission, go to a non-profit organization and probably you can have more impact. Of course, Google can,
influence
and be involved and support, but if you're driving it from there, you might, compromise kind of the quality of, search and the information you're having, right? So it's a balance, and it gets complicated. We were having the same question at Volvo, should we, moving to be a sustainable, going into circular economy and basically planetary safety from human safety, right? On what expense we're able to do that, right? And even how to talk about it and not sound hypocritical, because at the end of the day, you're building and selling cars and you want to be sustainable. It's, complicated and complex question.
What are some of because you mentioned something about those guidelines. What are some of these guidelines that maybe you spot in all of this scenarios, or I don't know, maybe it's looking into the past right now and then trying to create the future scenarios. What are some of those guidelines that you see, I know, emerging as important or maybe some that influenced a lot what we are today? And I know.
I think, for instance, with this method that we've been using compared to other foresighting methods and trend reports and, those agency reports on future of AI and, 50 scenarios on Web3 and all that. I think it's the power of narratives and creating narrative containers, meaning that based on specific principles and values, whatever lenses you're, looking through, you're crafting a few narratives that can influence strategies, that can influence design, art, and I've been looking at other, I like to combine frameworks, right? I don't, it's okay, this is useful for this, and then this output can become input in this one and all that. So to do so, I was looking into, for instance, art movements, design movements that, were shaking the world at that time, right? We were talking yesterday about how most of the revolutions and big moments were started by artists, like poets, philosophers, painters that were able to articulate the collective sentiment, and
theologians.
Yeah, exactly. And it's how do we, shift to something else right now? Change of mindset, change of the vocabulary. But the narratives are having the same grammar at the end of the day, right? It's the same structure. So I think the power of narratives are influencing our user experience, our interactions.
How do you create narratives? Can you create such narratives, or you can just like influence them? I don't know. They are something that they are ongoing developing, but you can just like tap into. I don't know.
They're emerging, but depending on the form, like the medium and audience, you need to adapt.
So you need to adapt to these narratives.
You're adapting the narratives a bit to based on, as I said, the medium. Like, what format are we using? Is it text? Is it video? Is it a simulation? Is it a product? Right. So, what artifacts are we playing with? So, what happens is like you can look in the future, and what you would extract diegetic prototypes. Diegetic prototypes meaning prototypes from the future that you're bringing in the present, and then you're doing backcasting and looking, okay,
something similar to what NVIDIA did. I was just talking a couple of days ago with a friend. I was like, I think NVIDIA was like jumping through the future 20 years ahead. 20 years ago, they knew this thing, AI, something will come, and they built a chipset specifically for that.
Yeah.
Because it didn't make sense until, I mean, they tried to tap into blockchain and it helped them grow. But until the LLMs, I mean, when LLMs came, basically they skyrocketed.
Yeah. For me, what I appreciate about, I met Jensen 2 times, I think, in the past, but early on,
when he was not popular,
and he stayed the same. Like I like that about him, like that humbleness and like foresight ability, like understanding, like and that comes in every few generations. Like, for instance, you had the same with I loved to play Railroad Tycoon as a kid, right? And you had these missions to connect these big cities, right? And the thing is that there was a lot of investment into foresight, knowing that route will work and that there will be many trains, and you had to predict. And that's what I like about the game, because it did a bit of stock investment, and you needed to bring industries around the train track, and then you would make cities grow. And that came with risk and foresight. Like, you had to build the rails first, and then, and this is what's happening with AI. Like, it happened with the metaverse in a wrong way. Like, let's build it and maybe they'll come, right? But it's harder than we think. Yes. And same, we're doing a lot of investments in AI infrastructure now and models and all that, but the use cases are not moving as fast, and the usage of it's like...
It was this, I think, a couple of weeks or something like that ago, Sequoia published that very interesting article, the 600 trillion AI gap or something, where they was exactly addressing this. So like, the investments in the infrastructure of AI, it's huge, and the use cases, which are actually the companies that like the revenues of the companies that are using this infrastructure to generate value, is like a gap between this of 600 trillion, I think, or billion. Anyway, huge.
Yeah, I mean, there need to be high investment for the infrastructure to be in place to make sense, right? Like the internet, the network.
Yes.
Like, you had to build the network. You had to put cable,
and each cable
through the ocean, like, to connect the world, and then the use cases followed. And you could argue how much value that brought, but it did in many ways, right? Like, society is not the same, and it won't revert back.
How do you, I mean, from your perspective, being into this field and others around it, I mean, AI is not something that we invented 3 years ago. It's, I know, until since 1980 or something, even 1970, I think. So how, I mean, yes, the LLMs, they basically changed the landscape and the approach to do AI. But how do you see it? I mean, like, what sparked all of this, or where is it heading? How do you see all this mechanism working into this industry right now? Because you're also right now building an AI startup, so
I mean, it's really interesting, as when I was working with AI, for me, like especially in gaming, you're building NPCs with certain behavior. You're building some intelligence,
yes,
right? Then with self-driving cars and eye tracking and all that, there was computer vision, neural networks, understanding how it works, understanding how to train a model to do segmentation, recognize objects, right? So it was a different type of
framework basically.
yeah, like the old school AI, as we call it. And now, for instance, we need to specify when we hire ML engineers, like the old school or the modern, which are like, hey, do you have experience with AI? And they're like, yeah, I can do fine tuning, prompt engineering, RAG, vector DBs, graphs, all that, which is a bit, but it all started with, that Transformers paper. And I've been having these discussions back and forth. We had a panel with Carlos Calva and Jackie Mori. You can find it on the internet at South by Southwest. We call it Beyond Generative AI, and we're looking at world modeling, and it was so interesting. Like, at South by Southwest, they don't necessarily tell you in which room you'll be or how many participants they're expecting. So when we were preparing for our talk, we were going outside of the convention center, and we saw a queue from outside, and we were like, wow, I wonder, is it maybe NVIDIA or OpenAI talk, because they were really popular. And then we were going to find our room, and it's like, oh, wow, I think this is our room. So it became super, super popular.
Wow.
And we're talking like about storytelling and entertainment and how, generative AI might influence. But what's next? Because there are theories that we will hit a cap or a ceiling, or if we didn't hit it yet, that it's a bit beyond the fact that, oh, there's not enough data, we need more data, or that there needs to be something beyond Transformers. And even Jan LeCun was saying, encouraging researchers, hey, look beyond that. Don't research LLMs because it's 7-year-old papers. Look beyond. And I think the future is like some sort of hybrid model where you use LLMs with causal models and deterministic models, where you can have the old school models that we were using for simulation and different repositories, for instance, for math, for science, for object recognition, and then you combine it with LLMs to tie up and orchestrate.
Because LLMs have this use cases in generative AI and so on and so forth, but when it comes to very exact use cases, you can't rely on LLMs.
No.
And basically that's why currently the use cases of AI in general are super limited.
Yeah.
Because as you said, and like now it's also popping up in my head, like combining these two will basically open and explode.
Yeah.
Because in the old traditional way, you didn't have this the power of this LLMs, but in this new one you have this, and many people are referring it to the hallucination effect of LLMs.
And I think also a lot of the cases are like people are talking about the amount of content you can create, right? So like imagining the generative AI, so not only LLMs, but like diffusion models and videos, pictures like Sora and all that, and stable diffusion, runway, where like, oh wow, you can build your own series or movie and so on. And with AR or VR, you will have infinite personal content. But
Yes.
we do
Yes.
have stock culture, meaning that I like The Office and I saw it 12 times because I can have references and jokes from The Office with my friends and colleagues, and you can relate to it. But if I say, oh, I made a crossover between The Office and How I Met Your Mother, it's super dope, you should watch it, and you would be like, well, I could generate my own personal stuff. Why should I watch your thing, right? Because I have that option. So that's the thing with AI. It's hard for content to become a banger or a hit. It's like you're more curious what AI is capable of, but not necessarily the narrative, the content, the quality of it, and that it's shareable. And there was also on the podcast they were discussing about this ratio that there, even with YouTube, you have 1% creators, 9% people that are active, like interacting through comments, likes, and then 90% they're passive.
Yes.
Like they're just consuming content. But that there's so much content out there that it's hard to, you can't consume it.
Yes.
And then imagine how much time does it take for you to know what to watch on any of the streaming services like Netflix, or look for something on YouTube when we are in a group, and how much time would be to know how to prompt exactly what you want. And so it's like I think there's still a long way to go there. And there was this popular post that somebody was saying that I want AI to wash my dishes and vacuum the house, not paint and write, right? That's what I want to do.
That's very interesting, because that was also very similar. I had a very similar feeling when I read through the basically not the pitches, but like the description of the startup that pitched at YC Demo Day this spring. I don't know if you watched a couple of those, but I was like, everything was about AI.
Yeah.
But it was like this: text to speech to I don't know, I'm generating this and that. Like, man, it's YC, like DYC, and this is like the problem that we are solving now. How about, I don't know, medical, city planning, floods, I know, fires, and so on and so forth. What's happening? And this is. I see it as kind of a distraction to the real problems, the real problems that we have.
If you think it's, as you were mentioning before, the same parallel with blockchain in a way, the utility aspect versus speculation, and that you need to build the infra first and certain content, and the systems and subsystems and DAOs and whatnot. But I think, like utility and productivity and entertainment and like those things tied together. There were some of the AI thought leaders. I can't remember who. I don't know if it was Ilya from ex-OpenAI, that was saying not to, how do you call it, anthropomorphize AI, meaning that make it more human, rather the opposite. Like,
wow,
as in you want it to be efficient and productive, not having the human flaws, right? Like, also same with robots. Like, maybe the way we are built, we are inefficient to perform certain tasks, so don't make humanoid robots, right? So I think those were
interesting paradigm.
Yeah.
You're involved a lot in, basically yesterday we were talking and you said that basically your job and your colleague's job was like thinking about thinking, and that's, in my opinion, the huge part of innovation. And your title was innovation manager at Volvo. So How do you, and you basically you saw all this world ecosystem competing on innovation, like China and Asia in general, US, Europe, and right now we are in a kind of a, I don't know how to call it, like in a dump with EU regulating everything and like putting barrier after barrier in the way of doing innovation. How do you see this? How do you see Europe in this context? Can we innovate? We were talking about future and future scenarios with all this regulations and guidelines that Europe is putting ahead of us. How do you see the innovative ecosystem of Europe in general? And I don't know, maybe also then we can go into more close home, Romania, which is like the least innovative country in Europe.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Been having conversations with the EU Commission many times, either in advisory role or being into certain task forces or panels.
Are they aware of what they are doing with these regulations? I mean, are they doing that exercise of future scenarios? Look, we'll give this regulation and understanding the impact of that regulation 10 years ahead, at least.
Not as much. I would say it's like...
Or is just reactive regulations?
They are a bit reactive in a sense, but I think the main difference is the appetite to risk and like being accountable, because the European system itself having so many members and it's so interconnected, it's quite complicated. I said in another podcast about how, like in US we need to fight with big lions, like the big tech companies that they're already influencing, the economy, they're influencing politics and all that, right?
Culture
and in Europe we have these small monkeys, but if the small monkeys work together in ecosystems, they can take down lions.
A lion, yes.
But that takes a lot of coordination, you need to,
put the monkeys in line.
In line, exactly. And then again,
you need a lot of bananas.
then again, the interesting thing is that we have a bit of a misconception of like when we're thinking about tech companies in US, a lot of them are still run by founders.
Yes.
They're the visionaries, they're setting direction, they're taking the risks, they're fighting with the system, trying to find new regulations, all that. In Europe, we have 100, 200 years old companies and conglomerates and family-owned and dynasties that, are running. They're in different boards. Like if you can look it up, a Wallenberg family, it's like one of the biggest dynasties in the world. They're from Sweden. I think there are a few brothers and their wealth combined is like 500 billion or something.
Wow.
And it's like real estate, tech, science, universities, politics, right? And like if you look how the boards are set up here, the different KPIs that European companies have, it's not much risk, right? Because you have so many systems like pension funds and healthcare and things that are dependent on performance of certain companies, and then you need to create jobs and all that. And it's slower to move these ships rather than having like this founder companies that, okay, we just from tomorrow we switch direction, and if the board doesn't like it, sue me, right? Something like that. But a lot of it is kind of coming out of fear, It's my theory, as some countries need war with their neighbors to unite people to keep it together. Like you need a bigger role, bigger vision. Some of that is in different policies that would help economy grow. Some of that is different incentives. I was having a panel on this on in startup innovation and EU, the EU ecosystem, and I didn't realize that the other panelists were actually from EU. So I was like just hitting on EU Commission, and I was like, I don't want, even though I applied for a lot of EU grants, and yeah, you form these consortiums and you can access, and there's been put a lot of money on these projects like Horizon and all that, so you can access quite a lot of money. But I don't want to sit and write 70 pages to convince you that I will do something interesting, and I might, create innovation or IP and all that. And what Horizon does, it is that value of IP. It's like you start for 2 years, you're doing a project, you're writing a report, you report it out, you get some money in return, and that's it. There's no follow-up. Nobody picks it up from there. It's like, because it gets complicated. You're sharing IP with the university partner, with the bigger company, with a few other startups, with the city maybe, and then you're like, okay, so we finished this project, what's next? And then you either need to reapply, and it's like no real continuation. So
yes, I think this is like also the way they think and structure and design all of this is like super siloed.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it's in instead of actually connecting it and creating ecosystems, they're still in like with short lifespan, and you need to reconfigure it the next time or so on. And one other like what I was proposing is like, because they were like, oh, we need to compete with US, we need to compete with China and so on. It's like, yeah, but then let me as an entrepreneur make 5-6 beautiful slides. You believe me, you invest in 2 years if I need more money. Or
it's called venture capital, not
exactly.
EU capital.
And now there are a few good initiatives from EU where they're kind of doing this innovation, or VC agencies that are kind of hybrid EU money and some private money. I do think that's a way, one of the ways to actually help Europe. Same in Romania, that you said that we will cover Romania as a topic. I had it on my mind for a while, so I went in Bucharest, I went in Cluj, Brasov, here to see, different ecosystems, what are the quality of startups, relation with the universities, the research labs, building competences, and also areas like problem areas or problem domains for these startups to grow. But then I went also in the neighborhood in Slovakia or Macedonia, Georgia, and I met startups there, and I was like, wow, I think, for instance, in Macedonia, I was more surprised on how they're thinking about this, or like how they're acting. And I think the region itself needs to come together. I think for Romania ecosystem to thrive, and this personal opinion, like a part of research labs and universities and big industries like corporates that would, collaborate with startups and help them grow. I think also the angel investment culture is not there yet and not mature. I think for Romania as a country and the startups that we are having, we would need at least 5 unicorn angels to be able to fertilize the soil and sustain some of this, because it's different than working with VCs.
Yes.
And VCs here tend to put, Series A KPIs
on a pre-seed.
pre-seed when, we should invest in the team, in the people, in the machinery.
Let's don't go there.
Yeah,
please.
so I think I think that's one of the issues. I do believe that Romania needs a few more success stories, a few more unicorn angels and founders that took the risk and showed that, yeah, you can build it here.
How can we influence that happening?
Since I worked in the beginning, I came from a startup world, like Unity, iTribe, then Volvo Corporate. What was interesting at Volvo working with the tech fund is that corporate rounds are usually late. They're
Yes.
a bit lower risk, B series, C series, D series, but the amounts, the tickets
Huge.
are big, right? So then I got the network of investors that would, take you through the IPO from early to IPO, right, and beyond. They're there to help you during problems. I saw there is in Denmark and Sweden by founders, so they only take founders and unicorn founders in their
Portfolio.
no, in the investors, like the
the
partners
team,
and
the
the
partners.
team. Yeah,
Nice.
they open source term sheets and everything is super easy. Like from the first conversation to signing, you have all the information out
Yes.
there. So
Yes.
it's super transparent process. There are a few more that I know, a few that they will stick with you till till the end, right? They will try to help you. And I saw people in action. Like I've been at some of these conferences, and one of my friends from one of these big, probably it's the biggest in Europe, they're doing like some pre-IPO investment, and one of the investors pulled out and it was 100 million ticket.
Wow.
In 20 minutes, a few calls found somebody else,
Wow.
And I was like surprised by that,
Wow.
trust and name, and knowing that those people will stick with you and help you as a company. Also growing founders, like a lot of the founders that I worked with and partners and all that. I've been trying to teach my students that as well. Like, you need to grow into the role. You need to do the work before you get the work, right? It's like being CEO of a company or executive or CTO means nothing if, in the first period, like you'll do everything that's needed, right? You'll be everything. And then, of course, I mean, I've been in so many teams and I'm like, oh, I'm chief of product or like head of something. And it's like, in order to be head, you need a body as well. So where's your team, right? It's like, what are your responsibilities? What are you doing? But no, for Romania, I think there are a few factors that I see. We are weak in product design, user experience, understanding the user needs, articulating them, extracting requirements. We're skipping steps. We're going into solution really quick. It's like, oh, we built the prototype. Look, we have these features. And like, so what? For what? What does it solve, right? So we jump into solutionism super fast. That's due to lack of design, good design schools and designers. Like, it's hard to find designers in Romania. And design's role is to ask better questions.
Yes.
Right.
Not find better solutions.
Yeah.
Features.
Yeah. And yeah, like the investment capacity. It's not necessarily the ticket size. It's just, we don't even have legal framework for safe investments, right? You need workarounds.
Yes, yes. Timi, I also know that you have a passion and also because we talked about like future scenarios, guidelines, values, ethics, so on and so forth. So, how do you see? Because one of the things that I'm also thinking a lot, it's like yes, technology which pushes us forward and innovation that pushes us forward, but then you have also we talked about culture, we talked about values, about society in general being prepared with the right narratives. What would be some of like values that you would promote in accordance with this technology advancements that we not I know start using technology in a not the right way, not to say the bad way. So what we should like keep more because and we're also talking about Europe, US, China. Basically our societies based on some more like similar values, some very different values. And you can see how they develop technology and for what use cases they develop technology and how they develop technology. So how do you see all of this working together?
I think, yeah, the approach is again like doing things bottom up or top bottom, and in the sense that, you know, somebody setting directive and strategy or dropping a technology, okay, now we'll start using it and then we all find ourselves part of it, or actually building it bottom up with understanding the collective needs and, you know, how can we share certain things and the some of the utility aspects there, like access to education, access to information, access to healthcare, creating new jobs, right? But in terms of values, I think I've been still, since I started with human-centric design, you know, I'm also looking at societal-centric and planetary-centric, and I challenge it not only in terms of manufacturing, but digital footprint, you know, like, okay, if you say that you care about sustainability, but your training of your model consumes this much energy and resources, you know, is it worth it that, you know, just because you have a hammer, not everything is a nail, right? Sometimes you need to solve it in different ways, and it's not only technology, it's the principles and curriculum. But yeah, I mean, as I said, there needs to be a balance with some of the values, for instance, and kind of the ethical guidelines that the EU needs to put in place. But you need room of experimentation. You can't just kill it. You need, like, I got attracted by technology and the future in a sense that I always look to push the boundaries to the limit till, for instance, maybe sometimes getting scared of it and taking steps back and taking conclusions, and then, hey, I think we all need to sit and talk about this or look at how this can be done in a better way, because that way might be, you know, in the detriment of others. Or so then again, transparency, you know, like with AI, a lot of these models are black box. So explainable AI, understanding what information is accessing, how is it working. A lot of people don't know. Transparency, trust as a currency. We need to maintain that. Otherwise we'll isolate ourselves even more. And some of these technologies, you know, you strap a headset on your head in the future, create your own content, you don't get out of the house. Yeah. but also dream and discipline. I think a lot of these things, and we need dreams and hope in a way. Like we need a common goal that we are, striving, that desirable future that we want to build, right? That in is what's the point to save the planet if we all hate each other, right? And still fight about differences. And
yeah. Thank you so much, Timi.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us, and wish you all the best in your endeavors with what you're building right now, and see you again soon.
Yeah. Thank you for the invitation, and also big congrats with what you're all building here. It's always an inspiration to follow, and I take pride in it. I show it to people. It's like, hey, this is my hometown. It's in the fortress. The city is helping. It's kind of a good example that I know also a lot of other organizations like this in the countries are looking up to. So really congrats for all the hard work. I know it's hard thing to do. Just being able to foster innovation and, as we were talking, fertilize the soil, creating the right environment for innovation to happen. It is a great environment.
Okay, thank you guys for watching. See you to the next one.